Shalom. Welcome everybody again to learning Hebrew through the Torah portion. And if you all would like for me to do so, I could share some content that I want to turn into a grammar video. It's going to be about Hebrew roots and Hebrew patterns. Otherwise, we could do a bunch of reading like we usually do. Either one is acceptable. Does anyone have an opinion?
Roots and patterns, please.
Roots and patterns. All right. So there will be some basic material here, but you're also going to find some, we'll touch on advanced material a little bit. Now, this content is not finished yet. So that means I'll just be able to show you what I have up to this point. Let's see. Cancel, get out of there. Where is it? It's over here. I'll have to scooch this around a little bit, put that right there and over here. All right. Hebrew or Semitic languages in general are really fascinating, at least to me, because of the way that words are created and formed. When I guess everyone here speaks English, maybe some other European languages. Typically, words are formed by putting root words together in order to make some more complex word. Hebrew uses something a little bit different. It uses roots, which are consonantal, 3 consonants, and then everything else surrounding those 3 root letters is what comprises the pattern, which in Hebrew is called the mishkal. I'll call it patterns here, but if you hear the word mishkal, that's what it's talking about. Okay, now, if we see an arbitrary Hebrew word, you're reading through the Bible, boom, here's a Hebrew word. What you'll find is that the stem, I'll call it the stem, which carries the meaning of the key meaning of the word, could have some prefixes and suffixes on it, which are attachable. You guys probably know about these, like, for example, conjunctions like and. It's not a separate word. It prefixes onto the following word. Well, there are some other things that will prefix onto another word. There are prepositions like ba, la, ka. There are articles like ha. There are interrogatives, which ask a question, yes or no question. There are suffixes, most of them pronominal suffixes, which says that, he or she or you or me, whoever that is, that's the object of whatever word it's attached to. If I want to say his horse, I would have the word horse and then stick a suffix on there that says it belongs to him. Well, there are some other suffixes too. One of them I'm calling the plural yod. This is something that most people don't get to study until intermediate Hebrew. I like to go ahead and let you know now. And then there's something else called directional hey, which is another suffix which can show up on words. So the stem, which is nested in the middle of, or I guess I can call it the heart of a more complex word, is going to have 2 principal components: the root and the pattern. You can see right here, I've given you an example word. This is, by biblical standards, this is a pretty long word. This is uchamalkenu. Uchamalkenu. What you're going to see, we're going to break this word down in just a minute, but the gray part at the front, well, those are prefixes. The gray part at the end, well, that's a suffix. The blue part in the middle, that's the stem of the word that carries the meaning of the word. All right, so these prefixes, what are they? How many are there? Well, there aren't that many. These are pretty much all of them right here. Maybe I've forgotten one, but this should be about all of them. What you'll notice is that the ones in the middle, stacked up in the middle here, are your prepositions. A preposition, remember, is anything that a rabbit can do to a box. Okay, in the box, on the box, from the box, to the box, like the box, as the box, around the box. Okay, there are 4 prepositions that will prefix onto the following word. You've probably seen these before. Be denotes some kind of closeness, whether it's in, at, with, by, even against. Le shows intention or direction. So to or towards, or maybe something is for somebody, it's intended for somebody, or it belongs to somebody. Lamed can do all of that. Kaf compares, like, as, approximately, about, according to, something like that. And then this right here is a mem with a chirik and a dagesh in the following letter because it comes from the word min. Min means from, and the min can attach onto, it can prefix onto a word, and the nun gets lost into a dagesh. Those are all of your prepositions. You can add a conjunction, ve, which of course can change into va or u, depending on the circumstance, it's usually translated and. Sometimes it shows distinction, contrast. So it could be but, however. And then if you haven't learned it yet, there's a huh that you can add to a word to introduce a question. This is something like Spanish putting an upside down question mark at the beginning of a sentence, so you know that a question is beginning before getting all the way to the end of the word, seeing the question mark. You're like, oh, and quickly inflecting your voice, a question? You know at the beginning it's a question. Now, some of you recognize the definite article ha and are wondering, wait, what's the difference between these two? And there could be a whole lesson dedicated to the difference between these two, but the short version is you expect the question hey to have a reduced vowel. You expect the definite article hey to have a patach and following dagesh. And then lastly, there's this she, which also has a dagesh which follows. This is a shortened form of a share. A share is a word that introduces what's called a relative clause. It tells you more information about something you just mentioned. I like the store that is on the corner of Elm Street. That is on the corner of Elm Street is a relative clause that tells me more about the store. So the word that would loosely translate the word a share, and this right here, she, is the shortened attachable form of it. Is it possible to have multiple prefixes on a word? Oh yeah, absolutely. If you're going to have multiple prefixes on a word, they would roughly follow this order right here. You would expect your vav or your interrogative particle first. These prepositions can actually stack, like mi lifnei is a word that stacks 2 prepositions. Let's see if I can spell. Milifne, like this. The mi is that one. Lif. Well, hang on. This has a shva and that has a chirik. I know it's because Hebrew can't allow 2 shvas in a row at the beginning of a word. So le becomes li. Mi lifne. If you didn't have the mem there, it would be lifne. So you just attach a mem to it, and it means from to. Pene is face. The face of what? From to the face. What does that mean? Well, it means that you were facing somebody, and then you left their presence. Like Moses went milifne Pharaoh. He was before Pharaoh, and then he walked away. So you can stack these prepositions. And then this would probably come last, either a definite article or that relative particle. Okay, so those are your prefixes. What about suffixes? Most of them are pronominal. Most of them tell you who the object is. If it's my horse, susi. If it's his horse, suso. I also included this right here, a plural yod. This is something we don't learn till later, but if I want to say his horses, you take the word sus, put a plural yod in there, and then you stick on your pronominal suffix. All of a sudden, what was his horse suso becomes something different. Unfortunately, it's pronounced all wackadoodle now. It used to be pronounced differently. It is susav, but the yod here tells you up, 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 up. We have a plural. The vav tells you it belongs to him. You could do the same thing with your horses. Susecha would have a tsere there. Susecha means it's your horses, plural yod. And then that directional hey, towards something. Like if I'm going home, I would say I'm going habaita. Habaita. Habait is the house. Habaita would be I'm going towards the house. Now, why am I mentioning all of this? Because whenever you're looking at an arbitrary Hebrew word, your eye needs to be able to pick out what's a prefix, what's a suffix, and then therefore what's left, which is the heart of the word. It's the heart of the word that has the root and the pattern. Everything else in front and behind it is merely tacked on to it. It's along for the ride. Okay, so let's go back to that example that I showed earlier. Uchamalkenu. This u is a variant form of ve. You put, two shvas right here. Ve plus ch. Wait, you can't have two shvas at the beginning of a word. I know. Hebrew fixes it. Turns this into an u vowel. Still means and. Ch is k. Remember, kaf compares, except there's a vowel before it. It's a begad kafat letter. It loses the dagesh. Uche and like malk. If you've seen my Segalit video, malk is probably the original form of what we better recognize as melech. The segals are invented. They are not original. Malk is the original form, and in this construct form, you get to see it. Malk. Then enu, we get the a, which is plural, nu, which means it belongs to us. You put all five of those things together, and you get and like our kings. 4 words to translate this. How about another example? Habacharucha. Habacharucha. Now you can hear me intonating my voice like it's a question. Why? Because there's a prefixed interrogative particle. Ha. Question. Cha is a pronominal suffix that refers to you, masculine singular. And then the heart of the word is bacharu. Bacharu means they chose. If we want to zoom in even more, we could say that the u is a katal suffix, the root is bachar, to choose, so together it means they chose. But I'm calling the whole thing the stem. Habacharucha, did they choose you? I'm sorry, I miswrote the how embarrassing. Did they choose? Uh-oh, I can't. Why can't I fix it? Oh, I know why, because it has to be right here. There we go. Let's put another O in there. Did they choose you? Maria, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, the interrogatory, hey, is it normally a prefix or is it a suffix?
Prefix.
It's always a prefix.
Always a prefix.
Okay, thank you.
And it can attach to any kind of word, or let me put it this way. I can't think of an exception off the top of my head of any kind of word that it could attach to. It can attach to nouns, prepositions, adverbs, verbs. So it will come at the beginning of the sentence.
Thank you.
kind of like any other question word would. Okay, so here's one last example. Ra'itiv baboker uknitiv ba'erev. So we have 4 words here, and all of them have some sort of prefix or suffix or both. Ra'itiv, this vav here is a pronominal suffix, 3ms, him or it, attached to the word ra'iti. I saw it, him. So when I go to look for the root and the pattern, I'm automatically going to cut away that suffix and focus on this here. Oh, look, the root is resh aleph yod with a T suffix, which says I did it. Baboker, wait a second. I wrote 2 things here, including the dagesh. I wrote 2 things here, but there's only 1 thing here. What gives? Well, Hebrew finds it hard to say b'haboker, and so it collapses the hey and says baboker instead. So we know that the definite article the is there because of the patach and the strong dagesh, but we don't get to see the hey, but it's there. We don't translate it as in morning, but rather in the morning. Here we get uknitiv, which is very similar to this one over here, except with a conjunction prefix, and there's that vav again, which refers to him or it. And there's your root, kana, or it's actually kuf nun yod with the T suffix that says I did it. And then ba'erev, here we get b, in, ha, with a lengthened vowel because of that stinking guttural right there that always affects vowels. It doesn't take a dagesh, so the preceding vowel will lengthen, but it's still the definite article. It's still a hey. So re'itiv baboker uknitiv ba'erev is translated as I saw it in the morning and I bought it in the evening. 4 words in Hebrew and a whole bunch of words in English. All right, let's talk about the stem. After we've peeled away the prefixes and the suffixes, this would be what I call the bare conjugated form, and it will be composed of 2 principal parts. The triconsonant, or usually triconsonantal root, which means there are 3 consonantal letters, and then everything else that surrounds it is its pattern. All the vowels, maybe some, I hesitate to call it a prefixed or suffixed letter that's part of the pattern because it's not a prefix. It's all part of the pattern. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Let's talk about roots first. This is what most people will spend an exorbitant amount of, an insane amount of time on, and really not talk about patterns very much. Well, I'll try to, break the mold on this one. There are a lot of roots here. Many of these you probably are familiar with. Maybe some of them you don't. My point is not to teach you the meaning of these roots. If you want to do that, great. I'm just showing you that 3 consonants constitute some sort of general meaning. Kaf, tav, and bet usually has something to do with writing or something written. Nun, gimel, dalet has to do with facing or opposing. Gimel, dalet, lamed has to do with being large or great. And chet, zayin, kuf, strong, strength. Are there always 3 consonants? Well, no. Occasionally you can get 4 consonants, and I think I know of exactly, I think it's 1 loan word in modern Hebrew that has 5 root letters. What you'll notice about the 4 consonantal root letters is that they often come from a different language. They are loan words into Hebrew, whether it's Aramaic, whether it's Akkadian, whether it's Persian. maybe even Arabic, but typically the 4 root letters have to do with something from a loan word, possibly chashmal or tirgem or something like that. But you'll also get some Hebrew words that have 4 consonantal letters as the root, because Hebrew can create new roots from something that already exists. Like, for example, galgal has to do with rolling. Does anybody know what gil means? Something like joy, excitement, rejoicing. Gil, when you rejoice, there is a repetitive motion. How about a gal, which is a wave? Again, some sort of repetitive motion. So what is a galgal? It's an invented word, it's an invented root from this idea of repetitive motion to invent a new word. You drop out the yod, you reduplicate the main consonants, and all of a sudden you have a new word, a new meaning. Does anyone know the word Golgotha? Means skull. Why? Because it's that round rolly thing on the top of your body. It has to do with rolling. There's another word, Gilgule. What is it? Gilulehem. I think it's Gilulehem. Gilulehem. I'm not sure about if the vav and the yod are in the biblical text, but the point is, these are idols. What? What do idols have to do with rolling? Well, easy. You cut a tree down, you take a log, a rolly thing, and then you carve it into some sort of a false god. It's Gilulehem. It's their rolly things that they fall down and worship. Has to do with this root of repetitive motion or rolling. Now, there are occasions where only 2 root letters are visible. Between you and me, there are even a couple of examples where only 1 root letter is visible. But we're not going to focus on those today. Like, for example, who is an Av? Well, it's a father. We know Av is father. Wait, I only see 2 root letters. Does it only have 2 root letters? Some people will tell you, oh yeah, it only has 2 root letters. And I get it. It's a simplistic way of looking at things, of looking at Hebrew. What really happened, and we know this from sister Semitic languages, is that there was a letter at the end that got dropped off. It was probably originally a vav, but in Hebrew, it's occasionally preserved as a yod. You'll notice a lot of switching back and forth between vavs and yods in Hebrew. So, in Arabic, it's abu. Why u? Because it's part of the word. In Hebrew, if you want to say our father, it becomes avinu. Wait, why the yod? Because it is standing in as part of the root, the historically lost root letter. How about if a root has the second and third root letter? What if they're the same? What you'll notice sometimes is that the third one disappears. Does anybody know the word im or am? Im is with, am is a people, and the root is ein mem mem, which means something like joined together. Why are people related to the root of joining? Well, because you're one group. You're all joined together. You're a people. Here's an example of a final yod that goes missing. We know the word al means upon, has to do with up. What is an aliyah? Aliyah is an ascent, a going up. The root is a yod, but you don't always get to see it. Like, for example, if I say he ascended, it would be ya'aleh. Where did the yod go? It's a weak letter. Nun is another common weak letter. especially when it comes at the end of a syllable. Does anyone know the word amen? Has to do with something being unwavering or fixed or steady. Does anyone know the word emet? Yeah, that's the word for truth. Amen is the root of emet. Where's the nun? It came at the end of the syllable. It is now gone. So sometimes you'll only see the aleph and mem. Sometimes you'll get to see the whole thing, like emunah. It all has to do with whether that nun shows up at the end of a syllable. Okay, this is very, very frustrating especially to beginning students, because how am I supposed to know what the root letter was if it's not there? I would kindly remind you that English via Latin and Greek is way worse, but in Hebrew, there are usually ways to ascertain what the missing letter was. If a letter goes missing like this mem or this nun, it will typically leave a strong dagesh. Granted, it's not the end of the word. Yod and Vav will vanish, but leave a trace in the vowels. They'll affect the vowels as they disappear. All right, so that's a quick overview of roots. We're looking for 3 root letters, sometimes 4, and sometimes a root letter will go missing. Now let's get into patterns. This is something that, again, that maybe most Hebrew teachers don't spend a lot of time on, and I understand why. I really do. I'm going to teach you the way that I think Hebrew and Semitic languages originally worked, and then tell you about what happened ever since then. I think that the way Hebrew originally worked is whatever the pattern of the word was, that conveyed the general function of the word. So if you take the root, which brings the general meaning, and then the pattern, which brings the general function of the word, you combine them together, boom, you created a Hebrew word, which means you could get a collection of words together that all have the same pattern, and they will all have something in common. Let's take this one right here. For example, katav means he wrote. If I throw in different root letters, but the same pattern, well, the meaning is quite different. He walked. So walked changed because that's my general meaning of the word, but the pattern, he did something, stayed the same. And no matter what root you put in there, still means he did something. Amad, he stood. Yashav, he sat. Here's another pattern. Here you get a patach, a strong dagesh in the second root letter, kamatz right there, and it's usually someone who does something for a living or is known for something. So if kaf, tav, bet has to do with writing, then who is a katav? Well, someone who writes for a living, a journalist. Okay, who is a ganav? Well, Gimel Nun Bet has to do with stealing, so a ganav is a thief. What about a rakav? Well, Resh Kaf Bet has to do with riding, especially some sort of a chariot, so a rakav is a charioteer. So this is beautiful that if you know the root of a word and the pattern of the word, you can actually surmise what the meaning of the word is, even if you've never read it before. Now, the pattern could be composed only of vowels. So like or which includes the strong dagesh there, or or and I could have listed, probably another 20 examples if you wanted to, but I'm just trying to get a point across. These only have vowels as part of their pattern. Furthermore, you could get some sort of a prefixed letter that is part of the pattern. Again, it is not a prefix. I get a lot of questions that from students where they say, what does it do to the word if you add a mem to the front? if you add a mem prefix. And it's really it's a non-question. It's a moot question because it's not a mem here. It's a mem with a chirik and a shva and a kamatz. That's your pattern. Try not to single out the mem as carrying some sort of a meaning. Sure, we could talk about how mem at the beginning of a word usually indicates some kind of a noun. Great. Will it always? Well, arguably, yes, but not necessarily. The prefix letters that show up as part of, excuse me, the letters that will prefix onto a pattern are limited. Okay. There are 22 letters, 23 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Not all of them can be prefixed letters. What am I missing here? For example, a hey or an aleph, mem, nun, shin, tav. What am I missing? I think that's about all of them. These are the only letters that can show up as the beginning of a pattern, like the prefixed letter of a pattern. Let's see. Christine, do you have your hand up?
Yes. So Merkava is a chariot. Is that the same mem situation?
Yes, exactly. There you would have a mem at the front, a hey at the end, and then all the vowels underneath. All of that is going to be your pattern. And the root is resh, kaf, bet, which has to do with riding. So the heavenly throne room chariot, whatever you want to call it, is called Merkava. Now, this word, to my knowledge, this word itself is not in the Bible reference. I could be wrong. I thought I looked it up before. It shows up in extra biblical texts, but the idea is clear. This sort of moving chariot that Ezekiel sees, and in Jewish tradition, it's called the Merkava. I do believe this word is used in the Bible, just not referring to God's moving throne. But anyway, I digress. So the mem and the hey, yeah, they're all part of a pattern, and they shouldn't be seen separate from the rest of the pattern.
Awesome.
Incidentally, mem at the beginning and hey at the end usually tells us that we have a noun, which is a location. Let me give you an example. The root sa'ad means to dine, to eat dinner. So what is a mis'ada? Well, it has that same pattern. So it's a place of dining.
It's a restaurant.
It's a restaurant. Afa means he baked, but the root is aleph pei yod. A ma'afiyah is a place where baking takes place. It's a bakery. Okay, so this is a pattern that seems to tell us that we're looking at a noun, which is a location. Oh, how about a mamlacha? Melech or malach means to rule or reign, actually, as a king. So this is a place of reigning. This would be a kingdom.
Wow. I could have used this lesson about 3 years ago, by the way.
Yeah. Hopefully
is amazing.
Hopefully lots of students will find this helpful. In modern Hebrew, especially, sheen will attach. How do I say this? Ooh, there are two ways of looking at this. They would say that a sheen can attach to the beginning and act as a fourth root letter to mean to redo something. Other languages like Akkadian and no, I think it's just Akkadian. Well, sometimes Aramaic. It doesn't matter. Sometimes they'll use a sheen to have this sort of causative sense, much like Hebrew uses the he feel, which is a causative sense. Tav can be tacked on to a root to create a new meaning, but it can also tack on to be part of the pattern, like tagmul. In the word tagmul, Gimel Mem Lamed is the root, and everything else is the pattern. This is some sort of abstract noun related to the root. The root gamal, you may think of a camel, but it means to pay back good or pay back in a good way. So tagmul would be translated as maybe benefit, some sort of a benefit, something where somebody paid you back in a good way. All right, now patterns can also have an infixed vowel. Now, to my limited knowledge, I believe only yod and vav can show up in the middle of the three root letters. So if you happen to see a yod or a vav, suspect that it is a infixed vowel that's part of the pattern, not necessarily part of the root. Can it be part of the root? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Remember earlier when we said aliyah? Here, the yod is part of the root. Aliyah. But there's your first root letter. There's your second. So where's your third? It's either missing or it's a yod, and it's a yod. Shir is a song. Oh, there's a yod in the middle. It must be part of the pattern. No, because you only have two root letters. There's one, there's two. Where's the third? It's a yod. So that would be 1, 2, 3. Shir is a song. And again, I'm just showing you all of these words that are related to the single root kaf tav bet, which has to do with writing. Katuv, it is written. Kotev is someone who is writing, that is an author. Tiv is a spelling. Kituv is a caption, something that's written at the bottom of your movie. Ktuviot are subtitles. There are tons of words that come from this root. And patterns can include a suffix. And again, the letters that could show up as a suffix are limited. Okay, there are not a lot of them. Definitely hey, definitely noon. You could have noon and hey. You could have yod at the end, like kana'ani, from the root kana. Kana is to be a merchant, to trade. Kana'an is the location name Canaan. And the yod on the end is a suffix. It's part of the pattern that says it's the gentilic yod. It says someone who is from Canaan. So we have the same thing with Hebrew. An ivri is a Hebrew. An ivriya is a Hebrew woman. So you can get yods, you can get heys, you can get nuns, you can get vavs. Are there any other letters? Maybe. I can't think of any. All right. This is getting a bit ridiculous. What I'm showing you here is a slew of words that are all from the root kaf, tav, bet. And you can look at how the meaning of the word changes based on its pattern. Tovet is an inscription. It could also be someone's mailing address. Ktiva is the act of writing something. Hichtiv is causative, making someone write, that is to dictate to them. If you want to turn it into a noun, hachtava, this pattern is a noun of someone causing someone to write something out. Let's see, is there another good one here? Tovet. Here we go. Ktuviot, subtitles, mentioned that earlier. Michtavia. This is kind of cool because it gets a yod in there, but it also has mem at the front, hey at the end. A place of written things. A portfolio. Ktuvim. If anybody knows the what do you call it? The Rosh Teva, what do you call it? The abbreviation Tanakh. T stands for Torah, N stands for Nevi'im, prophets, and K or Ch stands for Ketuvim, the parts of the Bible, the writings, those things that are written, which in Greek is called the hagiography, meaning the holy writings. That would include like Psalms and Esther. There's that sheen again, which means to redo something. Shichtuv is the action of writing something again, a revision. All right, so why do I show you all of this? Why am I showing you everything about how patterns work? Simple. Because I want you to be more familiar with patterns. We're so focused on roots, and that's wonderful, but it's half of the equation. Roots bring the general meaning of the word. Patterns convey the general function of the word. Now, how many roots are there? How many patterns are there? Biblically speaking, maybe there are about 200 roots and about 200 patterns. That's a lot. I mean, what's 200 times 200? That's a lot. That's going to be what, 40,000 combinations between all the roots and all of the patterns. In modern Hebrew, it's much more than that. There's been a lot of invention in the Hebrew language, especially during the rabbinic period after the closing of the canon of the Bible. And so we have a lot more roots, especially borrowed from Aramaic, and we have a lot more patterns as well. That number is probably closer to 1,000 now than 200. That's a lot of patterns, but it's not overwhelming because typically when you see a mem at the front, it's going to be some kind of a noun. When you see a tav at the front, it's typically going to be an abstract noun. I guess I should have said mem is usually a concrete noun. Tav is some sort of an abstract noun. Let's see. See, that's a concrete noun, portfolio. That's a concrete noun. It's a place. Look at that. A place of writing. It's a writing desk. Tav, that's going to be abstract. The prefix hit, if anybody knows about the hit pa'el verbs, the prefix hit is something that someone does to him or herself or does with someone else back and forth, like getting married. That's going to be a hit pa'el verb. Corresponding back and forth, hit pa'el verb. It's going to have a hit prefix. So hit katvut is the verbal noun of the action of writing back and forth, what in English we call corresponding. Okay, so now that I've shown you how patterns generally work, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Remember I showed you in, what was it, a few slides ago about roots that have a vav or a yod or a nun, or maybe a doubled second and third root letter, and how those letters sometimes go missing? Well, we call those weak letters. A weak root is one that has weak letter, it has one or more weak letters in it. And those weak letters sometimes, but predictably, disappear. This happens in English quite a lot. The main example I usually give is illogical. Where's the N? It's right there. No, it isn't. That's an L. I know. In means not in Latin. And illogical, well, the N goes missing and assimilates into the following letter. It's very immature of it. See, there's another N right there. How about when a Y predictably disappears and affects the vowels? Sky becomes skies. We don't even give it a second thought, but that's exactly what happens in Hebrew. Yod will predictably go missing and affect the vowels. Now, why does it do that? I'll give you an example. If anybody knows anything about the Southern accent, especially in America, you don't say sky, you say sky. Sky. I'm saying this right here, sky. And if you want to make it plural, it's skies. The point is, people say what's easier to say, even if it's incorrect. And that has an effect. Let me put it this way. The exact same thing happened in Hebrew very early on, probably even before written Hebrew existed, so that by the time written Hebrew did exist, those letters were simply left out. We'll get into some examples here in a bit. Here's the immature becoming immature because the N predictably disappears and assimilates into the following letter. Same thing happens with Hebrew. If I want to put min onto the next word, what word do I want? Min melech, okay? From a king. This noon is now at the end of a syllable, will predictably disappear and assimilate into the mem as a strong dagesh. Mi melech has a missing noon. So noon is a weak letter in Hebrew. I wasn't able to find a very good example of a W in English that goes missing because W has a very complicated history in Latin and therefore English. But I give you this example right here. Again, do most people say, "Excuse me, could you please hand me a towel?" Well, no, not unless you're, acting or trying to, present yourself in a certain way. Most people will call it a towel. A towel. I'm wet and need to dry off. Can you give me a towel? Why? Why is it that we've taken this awe and simplified it, at least in the way we speak, to this? Because it's easier. Hebrew did the exact same thing. I'll give you an example. Does anybody know the root bet vav aleph? It means to come or arrive or possibly even to go. If you want to put this into that pattern we saw earlier that says he did something, you would put a kamatz here and a vav here. Now, remembering that vav originally had a W sound, how would you pronounce this? Bawa. Bawa. Okay, this awa right here is three. Let me count them. Well, 3 or 4. I'm just going to say 3 vowel sounds, which in linguistics is called a triphthong. Maybe you've heard of a diphthong with 2 vowel letters. Triphthong is 3 of them. If you run into a triphthong in Hebrew, what you'll notice is it got simplified. It's a lot easier to say ah than it is awa. So instead of bawa, he came, it turned into simply ba. He came. It's too hard to say awa. The 3 main weak letters in Hebrew are yod, vav, and nun. Those are the 3 most problematic letters. Are there other weak letters? Sure. But they occur so infrequently that you really don't need to spend a lot of time on them. And we're going to spend not so much time on them right now. There's a verbal root, lakach, which means he took. If you want to say he will take, you put a yod at the front, and instead of yilkach, the lamed assimilates, and it becomes yikach. Okay, so that's one verbal root where lamed is a problem, and it behaves just like that noon that likes to assimilate at the end of a syllable. Also, there's the verb halach. Halach means he walked, but in the future tense, it becomes yelech. Wait, where did the hey go? It's gone. It behaves a lot like an initial vav. Some people would say initial yod, but I say vav because if you put this into the causative form, it becomes holich. Turns into a vav. Okay, so it's probably a vav, which was problematic, a weak letter, went missing, something like that. Okay, so we spent a little bit of time on those. Now we're done. What I'm showing you here is what happens if a weak letter shows up as the first or initial root letter. Remember, this is Hebrew, so right to left. The initial root letter, or if it's the medial or middle root letter, or if it's the final root letter. Now, when you start getting into advanced Hebrew, you're going to study each one of these in a lesson all of its own. You're going to study all those verbs that start with a nun, all those verbs that start with a yod or a pei, all those verbs that have a yod or a vav. I said pei, I meant vav. All those verbs that have a yod or vav in the middle. It's called hollow or ein vav yod. There are tons of names for it. If the third and second root letter are the same, you call that ein, and that's an entire lesson to talk about. If there's a final yod, or maybe there was a final vav that turned into a final yod, there's an entire unit talking all about it. So this one little chart is representing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lessons, no fewer than 5 lessons. Now, what I'm showing you is generally what happens. Nun doesn't like coming at the end of a syllable. So anytime you have a verb where nun comes at the end of a syllable, it disappears. Let me give you an example. Nagash has to do with arriving or reaching something. Maybe reaching is a better one. If you want to say he reached something, you put a yod at the beginning. He will reach. Wait, now nun's at the end of a syllable. Like this. It will predictably assimilate into the next letter, and you get yigash. Where's the nun? Right there. Same thing with nun over here. Sometimes nun will come at the end of a syllable at the final letter. Think about the word latet, which is from the root natan. Or even better, think about the word natanu. Natan means he gave. Nu means we did it. Natanu, wait a second. I'm missing a nun. No, you're not. There's a dagesh right there. One is the root letter nun. The other one is the suffix nu. We did it. Christine, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. So the nun, the assimilating of it at the end of the syllable is also because it doesn't like a prefix.
Tell me what you mean.
The nun also doesn't like a prefix. Correct? Is that what else?
I wouldn't. Well, I don't know. I would say it like that because there are places where nun will be preserved even though it gets a prefix. The best. Okay, let me give you a couple examples. For example, hanchil. Here it comes at the end of a syllable. Well, I guess I'll put hinchil. It comes at the end of a syllable, but there's a guttural following, so the nun will not assimilate. That hey is a prefix that says causation. You could also have hit nachesh. Let's see, hit nachesh. Let me just write it like that. I think that's right. Oops. Shva. So this hit is a so-called prefix, and there's a nun. It gets a prefix before it, but the biggest problem is when nun is at the end of a syllable and there's not a guttural letter following.
Okay. So there's conditions. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's at the end of a syllable and there's no following guttural, it will probably assimilate.
Okay.
So that means this and this are really the same. You know, that's the same. And in fact, this one over here, the tav, is also the same. Think about the verb shavati with a strong dagesh. The root shavat is to cease, to stop working, to rest. It's where we get the word Shabbat. So the word shavat would mean he ceased, he rested. And if you put a T suffix on there, well, it assimilated. It combined together. Shavati with a strong dagesh here. It's as if there are two letters tav here combined into one with a dagesh. So sometimes tav will disappear. It will act like a weak letter because the following letter is another tav. So you really, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that whenever you see a strong dagesh, and how do we know it's a strong dagesh? Because there's a preceding vowel. Anytime you see a strong dagesh, ask yourself what's missing. A strong dagesh means the letter is grammatically doubled. Why is it doubled? What's missing? In the example of mi melech, that strong dagesh says something's missing. What's missing? Probably the noon from min.
Oh, maybe I'm just thinking of like the noon from Nifal. Well,
Mhm.
that doesn't like a prefix.
Yeah, if I want to say he will on a nifal verb,
It
he'll
is.
give an example. Nishmar is a nifal verb that is, we'll either call it passive or reflexive. You know, I guard myself, or I am, or sorry, he guards himself, or he is guarded. And if you put that yod at the front that says he will do it, then all of a sudden you get yin shamer. Yin shamer. It's at the end of a syllable. So the noon of nifal will assimilate and you get yishamer. And this is that that hallmark ea that I teach my students. When you see ea, think of a donkey who's reminding you that you're looking at a nifal. Yisha, ea, yishamer, he will be guarded, or he will guard himself. So again, the noon came at the end of a syllable. So it has less to do with a prefix and more to do with when noon comes at the end of a syllable. Now, the tricky thing about nifal verbs is that if you have a guttural, the noon will still disappear, which is not something you would have expected, but it's basically a convention that Hebrew speakers simply fell into. So if we take the root alam, which is to vanish, ne'elam means he or it was diminished to nothing. He vanished. He disappeared. And then if you put a yod at the beginning, well, there's a guttural. The noon can't assimilate into the guttural. I know. It still disappears and it affects the preceding vowel. Instead of ye, it becomes ye. Ye alem. He will disappear. Ye alem. So here you're going to get a missing noon of the nifal anytime you're in the yiktol form with a yiktol prefix. All right. I already gave you guys a preview about what happens when yod and vav shows up in the middle of the root. You get those triphthongs, those diphthongs and triphthongs that naturally want to simplify down. In case you guys haven't picked up on it yet, languages generally tend to devolve. In my estimation, languages were very, very complex long ago, and people have made it simpler and simpler and simpler, and today we have English, which is probably one of the most complex languages because it's a train wreck of so many other languages. But the point being, Hebrew started off as a very, call it a pure or predictable language. But then as people speak it, those triphthongs simplify down. Things that are hard to pronounce simplify down. So that's why we now study a class of verbs, weak roots, that have a yod or vav in the middle, and those yod and vavs will go missing, predictably disappear in certain forms. Why? Triphthongs. Same thing happened, or I say same thing, not the same thing. Something a little different happens when the second and third root letter are the same. Since they sound the same, they will often become one letter with a strong dagesh in it. What if it's at the end of a word? Well, there you can't have a dagesh, so there's no dagesh. Even though the root is ein mem mem. Where's the other mem? It went into here, but we lost the dagesh. Other examples would be for like sav from savav, or lev from levav. Well, like ashash. I mean, there are tons of examples. Some of these you probably don't know, but the point is that when the second and third root letter are the same, those two letters will predictably combine together with a strong dagesh, or if it's the end of a word, no dagesh at all. I also talked about yod at the end of the word, and I combined that together with vav. Yod and vav are the two letters that are more like vowels than they are consonants. Properly speaking, they are consonants, but think about it. Pronounce the letter yod. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's almost like you're saying e. Here, let me clear screen. It's like saying yeah, 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 yeah. Well, that's more like a vowel than it is a consonant. I know. How about this one? Wah, 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 wah. Well, again, that's more like a vowel. So these are sometimes called like pseudo consonants. They act more like a vowel, and because they do, that creates more diphthong and triphthong combinations that naturally simplified. So at the end of when yod and vav show up at the final root letter of a root, they will predictably disappear if they created an uncomfortable triphthong at the end of the word. So think of, I already gave that example. Let me think of another one. Bana means he built, but it probably should have originally been banai. Banai. Why? Well, let me take that off. There we go. Banai. Now this ayi apparently was too hard to pronounce. So instead of banai, this was left off. You have a hanging ah here that someone later on sticks a mater lectionis vowel hey, and then you lengthen it because you have to have a long vowel at the end of a word. Bana. What about in the yiktol? Same thing. Yiv. Now this one's a little tricky. I'm not sure if it would be yivnoi, like this, or yivnayi. I simply don't know. But whatever the case, that last syllable was too hard and simplified down to yivne. Instead of the original, either yivnayi or yivnoi triphthong. Okay, I would like to open up for comments and questions because I've reached the end of the content that I haven't finished this lesson. I still want to go through the meanings of patterns. I still want to go through what gutturals do to patterns and what weak letters do to patterns. But I've given you a pretty good overview up to this point. And if there are no comments or questions, then I'll jump over to the parasha and we'll do some reading for the next 25 minutes.
Just a question, Jared. Can we get a printout of these illustrations that you have on screen?
Yeah, I can get that to you. Yeah, I can probably post it on the group chat.
Thank you.
Could we also maybe download this lesson?
Let me finish it first. Okay. It's not finished yet. I don't want to, I don't know. I guess I could probably share it. My goal here is for you all to learn Hebrew. And if getting this is, going to help you, then I'm all for it. But I do want to try to finish this lesson, turn it into a video, a teaching that I can put on the channel. All right.
This is an excellent lesson, by the way.
Excellent. Excellent.
I
Thank
mean,
you so
this
much.
really like changed my life. So
Yes,
Jane,
thank you, Jared. Really good.
absolutely. Absolutely fantastic.
Great.
All right. We just finished Parashat Bo. Oh man, I even changed it to Bo. Look at that. Where is it? View. Where is it? This is really embarrassing. I changed it. I did. I really changed it. Apparently I didn't. I changed it on something, but not the right thing. So Bo. There we go. Now let's go back. Haha, Parashat Bo. Who would like to read Parashat Bo? But remember, Parashat Bo is Exodus 10 through 13. It's the last 3 plagues of the 10 plagues, and it's the Passover story, the exodus of the children of Israel from Egypt. If anyone wants to read, please put your hand up and I'll call on you. Remember, if you want to put your hand up, I think it's in the reactions button. Not the arrow, but just the reactions button, and then click raise hand. Maria, do you want to read the first verse?
Yes, I will try.
All right, excellent.
So, Ve'ele, no,
Right.
Ve'ele,
Ve'ele,
Ve'ele, Shemot, Bene, Yisrael, Habaim.
keep on going. The second line too.
Okay. Mitzrayim, et, Yaakov, Ish, Uvetu,
Uveto,
Uveto, Ba'u,
good. Ba'u.
Ba'u.
Now, based on what we've studied so far, we could very easily mark up. Let me see if I can do this. Mark up those prefixes and suffixes. The oat here, I know it's a feminine plural suffix. That's how we usually learn it, but it's not one of the suffixes that I would consider not a part of the pattern. So I'm going to leave that there. B'nai. This one's a little tricky. It probably is the plural yod instead of the root yod. Yisrael, that's a fun one because it's 2 parts anyway. Yisrael is going to be he will strive, or he is striving, and El is God. Here we go. Haba. That ha is a definite article. Aim, again, I would just leave as part of the pattern of the word. Here we get that directional hey. Mitzrayma. Mitzrayma. So what's the im right here? Well, that's going to be your plural suffix, or it's actually a dual suffix, and your root is mem tzadi resh. Yaakov has the yod prefix, which means he will do it. He will do what? Ein kufbet. He will heal. He will grab your heel. He will supplant. Ish, nothing to do there. Uveto. There's a prefix, there's a suffix, there's your root in the middle, bet yod tav. And there's a verbal form that we talked about, ba'u, from the root bo. Where's the medial vav? It's a weak letter. Let's see. Jesse, you're up to read next. Would you like to read? Oh, this is such a cute. Wait a second. Is this even right? Oh no. I've got the wrong one open. Why didn't you guys say something? That's why. Ha 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 ha. I had the wrong one open. This is Parashat Bo. Ah, see right there, Bo.
Bo.
That's the first significant word of the parasha. So that's what the parasha is named after. So thank you, Maria. I had you read the wrong verse, but hopefully we got to learn something from it anyway. Jesse, would you like to read this?
Okay. Va'omer Adonai el Moshe bo el Paro ki ani hichbadti et libo ve'et lev avra
Avadav. The yod is no longer
avadav
pronounced.
lema'an shite.
It's so tricky. This right here is, sorry, that right there is your cantillation mark. So it's only a
Oh.
chirik. Shite.
Shite otota ele bekirbo.
Very good. Ototai. This
Ototai.
gets pulled into a yod sound. Ototai. Good. Vayomer has a vayik tol vav at the beginning. Maybe we would call that I don't know. Some people look at that and say, "Oh, look, it's the and vav prefix." I don't think it is, but it's okay. Yod tells us he is the subject, so and he said. Who did? The Lord did. El, preposition, anything that a rabbit can do to a box. To or unto Moshe. He's the object of this preposition. Bo. Again, bet vav aleph. Where's the vav? It's gone. Bo el paro, go unto Pharaoh, ki ani hichbadti. So the root is kaf bet dalit. The hey is causative. Making something do something. And T says, I'm the one that did it. I did or have made heavy. Kaf bet dalit means heavy. Now, here they translate it as hardened his heart. I get it. Ooh, look at this word, libo. What's the root? O says his. So when they have two root letters, right? Three root letters, lamed bet bet. Ve'et lev avadav, there's your plural yod, and there's your vav that says it's his. Eved is a servant. Avadav is his servants. Lema'an, there's a prefix. Shiti, here the root is actually shin yod tav, and the chirik yod at the end says it belongs to me. My setting or putting or placing, ototai, my signs, ele, these of my signs, bekirbo, prefix, suffix, root. In his kerev, or kirb, as it originally was, in his guts. Well, guts in the sense of insides. So in his insides or in his midst. All right, who is up to read next? Let's see. Maria, do you have a question? I see your hand still up from earlier.
Yeah, no, just a question. The
Uh-huh.
word bow, I've seen it to mean also come.
Yes. Yes. So it just depends on context. If I am
Okay.
here and I say bo because I want you to go there, then it's going to be go. But usually bo does mean come. So some people will look at this and they'll say something like, God is over here standing between Moses and Pharaoh saying, come on, bo, come here, as opposed to God standing back and saying, okay, I want you to go over there. Makes it more personal. It's like God's, using his arm to say, come on, let's go, because he's already that direction. That's interesting. I get it. But yeah, sometimes we'll just have to translate it as go because he's not coming towards, he's going away. Also the word bo can be used with the going down of the sun. Bo hashemish. So what would we call that? The coming down of the sun? Well, probably the going down of the sun. Thomas, would you like to read?
Yes. ולמען תזפר באזני בנך ובן בנך את אשר התעללתי במצרים ואת אותותי,
Ototai.
אותותי,
See, ah is right
אשר,
here and yod is right there.
yeah,
Ototai.
okay. אותותי אשר שמתי בם וידעתם כי אני אדוני.
Very good. Now I did make a mark here where you got something off just a little bit. Here's your stress ulema'an.
ולמען.
Here you get a kamatz katan from the word ozen, your ears.
Yeah.
So be'ozne would be in plural, the ears of, well, in the ears of, yeah, they put in the hearing of. I get it. Bincha, your ben, son. Uven, and the son of Bincha. It's your grandson. Et asher hitalalti. Alal, this root right here is ein lamed lamed, but hey, we get to see both lameds. Woohoo! You don't always get to. Hit alalti. So this is something I did reflexively or with someone else reciprocally. B'mitzrayim, we saw that earlier. Be, plural ayim. Ve'et ototai, my signs, asher samti. The root of samti is sin yod, mem. Where's the yod? Weak letter. Instead of saying sayamti, it's samti. And then here, because of the preceding vowel, it's not bam, but rather vam. Vidatem, and that you may know, you all, tem. Ki, know what? Here's your content marker. Know that ani Adonai, I am Yod He Vav He. All right. Who would like to read next? Aziz, would you like to read?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
ויבוא משה ואהרון אל פרעה ויאמרו אליו כה אמר אדוני אלוהי העברים עד מתי מאנת לענות מפני שלח עמי ויעבדוני.
Excellent. Very good. I can hear your Elohe sounds more like Elohe, and I understand that etymologically it was probably originally a chirik, but in Hebrew it's an and then here you have your cantillation mark me'anta. Otherwise, you are an excellent reader. Is there anything in here you don't recognize, Aziz?
لعنت.
Which one? Oh, le'anot. Le'anot right here.
Yeah.
Le'anot. The root is going to be ein nun yod. Like onni. Oni is like affliction. And then le'anot, this tsere right here, probably comes from le'anot. Oops, there we go. Which is going to show us that it's nif'al. So it's going to be a passive verb. Where's the hey? It got swallowed up. Instead of le'hei, it becomes le'anot. And then tav at the end is just the part of, it's the tav suffix that historically always shows up on the infinitive construct forms, but disappeared for most verbs unless they are weak. This is a weak root because of the yod. Le'anot, to be afflicted, to humble yourself. All right, would anyone else like to read, or any comments or questions on what Aziz has read? Maria, do you have a question, or would you like to read?
No, a question. The word will you refuse? Is that me anta or me annetta?
This is a silent shva because it comes before a short vowel and because it has a weak dagesh following it. And then there's your stress marker right there. Me'anta.
Okay.
The root is ma'an with an aleph to refuse. And the binyan is me'en. Is PL. PL is some sort of intensive or intentional verb. And then ta,
Thank you.
of course, means you did it. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Would anyone else like to read? Here's a short one.
I'll read.
Yeah, go ahead, Christine. And then after you, Jesse, you can read the next one.
Ki'im ma'en ata leshelecha
L'shaleach.
shaleach et ami hineni mevi. Is this going to have a kamatz katan?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Machar arbe big vuleha.
Very good. Excellent. Ki im ma'en ata l'shaleach et ami hinni mevi machar arbe bigvulecha. Excellent reading. Here it's supposed to be a silent shva there, but because we have two noons in a row, it actually preserves some sort of sound. It's an audible shva. Otherwise, it's just hinni. So it's hinni. We do the same thing with the word hallelu. Hallelu. There should be a dagesh in there, but there's not. But we get two lameds in a row. So is this an audible or silent shva? Should be silent. But because the following letter is the same, we'll pronounce it hallelu. Like hallelujah. Here we get a missing letter. The chirik yod means it's mine, but we only have two root letters, right? Nope, three. Here's 2 and 3 right there with the strong dagesh. And bigvulecha. Do you see a prefix or a suffix on here?
Definitely a suffix.
Definitely a suffix. Echa is yours.
Oh, yeah, and the bet is a prefix.
Very good. Bet is a prefix, in or into. So gvul, or it's probably gavul. Is it gvul or gavul? Oh, oy vey. A gvul is a boundary or border. So here it's territory, in your territory. Here we get mevi. The root is bet something aleph. Where's the vav? Remember, bet vav aleph is to come or arrive. And then the pattern here is causative, what we would call hif'il, but it's also an ongoing action, what we would call a participle, some sort of ing translation. So because of the ni right here, that suffix means me or I. Look at me, mevi, causing to come. The pattern says causing, and the root is to come, causing to come. In English, we call that bring. Behold, I am bringing, or I will bring. Jesse, do you want to read now?
Okay,
Is it too long or you got it?
we'll try it.
Excellent. I like that attitude.
Vehisa et ein haaretz velo yuchal
Yuchal
lereo
lirot.
et haaretz va'achol.
The achal. Now be careful.
Achal.
The only time that an a vowel could be an o vowel is this one.
Oh, right.
If it's in a closed, unstressed syllable, it could be a short o, such as this one right here.
So ve'achal et yeter hapeleta
Hapleta.
hapleta hanish eret lachem min habarad ve'achal et chol ha'etz.
Three more words. Four more words.
Hatzomeach lachem min hasadeh.
Good. Min hasadeh. Good. This right here has penultimate stress. How do you read it?
Yeter.
Yeter. Right. Just like
Yeter.
melech or yeled. So it's also yeter. The root yod tav resh, which comes from vav tav resh, means to jut out or be excessive. So a yeter is a noun related to being excessive. Calls it the residue or another root that means something similar is shin aleph resh. It's something that is left over or remaining. You can see it's a nifal verb, feminine tav, with a definite article at the front. The remaining one, or the remains. I think I mentioned this earlier. I'll go ahead and say it again. Typically, feminine nouns are more abstract. So here, that which remains, the remains of something, well, that's more abstract. It's not something you can really label and count and hold and touch. So it's going to be, it's okay that it's feminine here. All right, what else? Okay, I think we're good here. All right, so I did not mention this earlier because I didn't want you guys to feel bad, but today is my daughter's birthday and they are having a party downstairs and I really want to join up. So if you all would please give me leave, I'm going to head on out. If you appreciate what you're seeing and want to support it, then by all means, please help me out and be a part of Hungry for Hebrew. Thank you all so much. See you next week. Lehitraot v'shalom.
Thank you.
Yitrot salam.
Happy birthday to your daughter.
Happy birthday.
Mazel tov.